And now I understand Angus Mitchell is joining us remotely from overseas. Is that right?
I can hear you, Senator. I'm not sure if you can see or hear me.
All right, mate. We can certainly hear and see you. Can you hear us? All right. Yep. Good. Are you overseas?
I can indeed.
Are you currently overseas or in Australia?
Yes, I am, Senator. I'm attending the annual International Transport Safety Association meeting, of which Australia's a member of.
Excellent.
Whereabouts?
Argentina.
Argentina.
So, just to, I need to just read this out because parliamentary privilege doesn't extend beyond Australia's shores at where you are. So, it should be noted that, Mr Mitchell, the parliamentary privilege applies only to people giving evidence in Australia. Parliamentary privilege is a special right that means that you cannot be prosecuted or disadvantaged because of anything you may provide as evidence that has been accepted by the committee or because you gave this evidence. However, because this privilege only applies within Australia, a person outside of Australia will not be protected by parliamentary privilege, and as such you may wish to refrain from making any adverse comments about any specific person or entity. Now, on that note, I just want to welcome the rest of the team that are here in Canberra. And did you have an opening statement by any chance?
Thank you, Chair. Colin McNamara.
No, we don't have an opening statement at this time.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Now, we'll just get stuck into questions. I understand Coalition have some questions. Senator McKenzie, the floor is yours.
Well, I will be putting on notice some questions about the Essendon Airport crash and why the report took as long as it did. I'm just wondering if we can go to question on notice 5204. In the May budget, 23-24, the government's imposed a $1.67 million cut to the ATSB over the forward estimates, and this followed a $337,000 budget cut in the previous financial year. How are you achieving this budget cut this year?
Thank you, Senator. Angus Mitchell, I'll just say for the record, Chief Commissioner of the ATSB. We have a relatively flat budget of $21 million, and that has been for some time. Now, we are subject, and have been for many years, the savings dividends, and that hasn't been quite to the level that you just mentioned there, but we do constantly look at supplier costs, accommodation, etc., to make sure that that we can realise savings where we need to. In fact, in this budget round, we did get a roundabout, and my Chief Operating Officer can provide the exact details, but we got somewhere in the vicinity of about $3.8, $3.9 million, I guess, top up in our budget to maintain our level of 110 staff, which is we've been set since around 2009. So our staffing levels, whilst have been constant throughout that period, we have had times over the course of the last 10 years to reduce staffing numbers to keep up with inflation. And obviously our supplier costs, accommodation costs and wages costs have been going up at a faster rate than budget objectives. But
in answer to my question then, do I take it from your answer, which puts in all the inputs and some of the outputs, that it will be through staffing reductions that you will meet the budget cut?
That is how we... Well, I wouldn't phrase it as a budget cut as such, Senator. We actually had a budget increase this year above our normal appropriation in order for us to maintain our minimum staffing level of 110.
Okay, so my understanding is that there was a $1.67 million cut over the forwards. Is that correct? Maybe the Chief Financial Officer can assist, or the Operating Officer.
Senator Colin McNamara, Chief Operating Officer. No, I'm confused by that figure that you've presented, but I can back up Mr Mitchell's comment that we did actually receive a funding increase, a one-off funding increase of 3.898 for next financial year.
Okay, and last financial year there was an efficiency dividend or a budget reduction of $337,000. Is that correct?
That was correct, but that was also, Senator, offset by another one-off funding increase of $3.8 million.
Okay, so we've got these efficiency dividends, for want of a better word, or savings targets. But then do you have to go through an ERC process to then sort of say, if we are subject to that, we won't be financially sustainable, so we'll need a top-up?
Yes, so what was premised, we obviously raised with the government that our staffing levels have decreased to what we think are a fairly critical low, and is limiting our opportunities to do what we need to do. So that is presented, and then it was considered that, okay, well, you've got evidence that you're dropping down to about 95 staff.
Yep.
So then
You've gone as low as you can go?
And then it's a cycle every 5 years, and then that was when it was recognised that to get us back to 110, which is our minimum core capability, we were then given the 3.8 as a one-off, and then that is carried forward for next financial year through this budget at 3.898.
Okay, and so why wouldn't you just be exempt from the efficiency dividend?
So the efficiency, small agencies up until about, I think, please don't quote me, but 3 to 4 years ago were obviously anything under 200 FTE was exempt, but about 3 or 4 years ago that efficiency dividend did kick back in for even small agencies. Senator?
That explains it. Thank you. I just quickly want to go to, I will just ask a couple of questions around a report into the ATSB, one of your reports titled Aerodrome Design Standards and the Buller Road Precinct Development at Essendon Fields Airport. Someone at the table that can assist with that?
Senator, I can probably take the initial questions, but the detailed, one of the report authors is, I think, sitting there that can give you any specific detail. Patrick Horty.
Okay. When was the report commissioned?
Senator Patrick Hornby, General Counsel. So there was 2 reports. One was into the accident itself, which was commissioned immediately after the occurrence in 2017.
The design standards?
That's right. And then off that, there was a secondary report which was into the design standards itself.
Yeah, that's the one I'm interested in.
Yes, that was commenced in October 2018.
October 2018 it was commissioned?
Yes.
And when was it released?
It was released last year, Senator.
Last year, so 2023. What month?
In June.
June. 5 years. Why did it take such a long time to complete?
It was a pretty complex investigation, Senator. It actually went out through 2 rounds of draft report consultation with stakeholders. During that time as well, the obstacle limitation surfaces at the airport changed, which were the subject of the investigation. So aspects of the investigation had to be reopened partway through it. Additional information had to be sourced from the International Civil Aviation Organisation and from other stakeholders. It was complex in the sense that it was looking at design standards that went back to the 1960s.
Yeah. So my understanding there were various iterations of the report. How many?
2.
2? Are you sure there were only 2 iterations of the draft report?
It went out for consultation 2 times.
2 times? How many submissions to the early reports and suggestions were made by Air Services Australia?
I don't have that to hand.
On notice, if you could take Air Services Australia,
I can take that on notice.
CASA and the department separately. Can we see the submissions from each of those 3 organisations to the report?
Your Honour, sorry.
Wow.
I'm used to...
That escalated quickly.
I often appear in... Well, I think someone got upgraded to a doctor earlier. So,
well, hey, yeah. All right, it is getting late.
I do spend a lot of time in courtrooms, Senator, but
That's pretty cool. I've never been called, Your Honour. Yeah, probably not.
Senator, I apologise. So there was a number of stakeholders involved in it.
Can we see the submissions of CASA, the department and Air Services Australia?
Senator, our draft report consultation process is confidential under the Transport Safety Investigation
But now that the report's been released and...
It gets classified as restricted information under the Transport Safety Investigation Act.
So what were the concerns of each organisation?
Our final report listed the views of the different parties, so they were actually contained in the content. So where there was disagreement
That's clear
or
within the
concerns
report
about the
itself.
ATSB's position, that was published in the report.
What is your role, not yours personally, or responsibility to the master plan process at these federally owned leased airports?
The ATSB as an independent investigator doesn't have a role in receiving any plans, draft plans for consultation.
Or providing advice
Or
to
providing
government
advice.
around... Do you think you've got a level of expertise that would be useful to the approval process in a similar way that Air Service and CASA now are asked for advice in the approval process by a Minister for draft plans?
The risk with that, Senator, is we're an independent investigator, and if we provided advice on draft plans and later on there was an issue with that airport involved in an accident, then we would not be an independent
Commentating on your
investigator
own
and not be able to
advice.
investigate.
What directions did your organisation provide to federally owned, privately leased airports to ensure further inappropriate building construction, airspace intrusion did not progress, given that accident?
Well, given that accident, so we published a report from that accident investigation which outlined any concerns around oversight of obstacle limitation standards under the Airports Act and also under CASA's legislation. But we acknowledged also, Senator, that those obstacle limitation standards were under review by ICAO, and they've proposed a number of change standards going forward, which went out to states for consultation, my understanding is last year.
So do you think local governments need to be included in some of these consultations, given that they're in charge of planning approvals off the site of the...
So my understanding is that's probably a question more directly for the department that administers the Airports Act, but my knowledge is that local governments do get involved and do actually have responsibilities for referring any intrusions for consultation themselves.
All right, I've got a couple more on notice, but that's it for me.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks a lot for that, Your Honour. Sorry, Senator. No. Feels like a bit of a moot court in here at times, but that's it. I understand there are no further questions.
Very student politics.
Yeah, very student politics indeed.
1990 or 1988.
All right. Mr Mitchell, thank you. Enjoy your time overseas, and we'll see you next time in person,
Don't eat too
hopefully.
much Argentinian beef.
And thanks to all your team that are here tonight as well too.
About 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes. Oh, lucky keynote speech. Now, on that note, we're now going to